I've stayed silent on a lot of stuff lately, but I feel like it's about time I talk about some hard subjects. For those of you who might not know me, I grew up Jehovah's Witness, and I'm going to give you a little insight into what it was like to grow up as me. Let's get into it. Lots of you guys probably know my story. I grew up Jehovah's Witness to a pretty abusive father. Being Jehovah's Witness, I wasn't really allowed to have friends outside of the religion, and there really weren't any members of the religion to befriend anyways. They were all mostly way older than me, or not interested in being my friend. I wasn't allowed to hang out with kids I knew from school, wasn't allowed to go to their house after school, or any of that. So from the very start, I was kind of socially crippled. Now, I've talked about some of this before, but it's not really a subject I bring up very often. But I do have a point to this, so let me tell my story, and I'll get to the point at the end. When I was about 12, 6th grade, my brother got married and moved to another state with his wife. That left me alone with both my parents, who were extremely unconventional people at best. My dad was fairly physically abusive to my siblings, but not so much to me. Yet. As time went on, my dad started to get more and more aggressive with me. Until one day, when I was in 7th grade, I committed some perceived error and he paddled me so hard, I was literally black and blue. My parents decided not to send me to school because I literally could not sit down. From that day, they decided to homeschool me. So I was Jehovah's Witness, heavily isolated from society in general, and I was alone in a house with a physically abusive person. I had no experience with social situations at all. For the next 4 years or so, I didn't have contact with the outside world. I remember watching live news on TV because it was a connection to the outside world. I knew somewhere in the world at that exact moment, somebody was doing what I was watching them do on TV. It was a connection to another human being. My mom worked, and since my dad was on pain medicine, he slept most of the time. But I do remember sometimes he would get angry with me. He would stare me in the eyes until I looked away. He would try to assert his dominance over me in any way he could. He would try to crush my spirit, my confidence in myself. And when I finally did talk to other people, I didn't know how to act with them, and I was too afraid of who I was to try to interact anyways. He succeeded in crushing my spirit. Sometimes he would go on a rampage. I'll spare the details, but suffice to say, he was very violent. I would lock myself in my room until he busted the door in. Then I started putting a shelf in front of the door, clutching the phone in my hands, trying to get a hold of my mom at work, while he beat the door in, trying to get to me as I played Creed in the background to try to calm myself. To this day, there are a few sounds that trigger post-traumatic stress. The first thing is the sound of the song Higher by Creed, and the second thing is the sound of a violin played softly. Hearing either of those two things instantly throws me into the body of the 14-year-old kid, pushing the shelf in front of the door before my dad made it down the hallway. There were times when he told me he was going to send me to the juvenile facility if I didn't do what he told me to do. And everybody would believe him over me because he was the adult. My dad was my first bully. All those years of acting like that, my mom was the only person who believed me when I said he would attack me. Most people believed there was an altercation, but they thought I was the aggressor. I have literal scars from it, and the Jehovah's Witness elders believed my dad by default, since he was the head of the household and he was handicapped. He would attack me, my mom would leave with me, and then he would tell my mom she needed to be a good Christian wife and go back to him. Every time. That happened multiple times throughout my childhood. Since that time, I've become an adult. I'm not afraid of anybody anymore. I've taken on far bigger monsters than my father, like the Watchtower Society or Scientology. I refuse to be afraid of anybody anymore. I refuse to be anybody but who I am, because I've been bullied into being something I'm not, and I will not find myself in that position again. I know I'm not the only one with those experiences. I know there are lots of people out there who dealt with something similar, and that's why I talk about my experiences. Not just these, but all my experiences. Because there are people out there who can relate. They understand. They've been through it. Or even worse, they're going through it right now. And maybe hearing my message might show them that they aren't alone. That they've never been alone. And they don't need to watch live TV to know there's somebody out there thinking about them and their experiences and fighting to the fucking death for them so others don't have to experience it. So what's the result of the things I experienced? If nothing else, I got a sense of honor out of it. I am absolutely disgusted by abusive power. Nothing makes me more angry. Somebody in a position of authority telling somebody else to do something that will benefit them and nobody else infuriates me. Using people for your own personal gain. That's the first side effect from my experience. And another side effect is my inability to know the right thing to say or do in some situations. Since I was so completely socially crippled from being isolated from society, I have a really hard time knowing the right thing to say or do. I'm completely lost. When I was in school, I had lots of people doing the same thing to me that my dad did. Twisting the things I say until they're unrecognizable. Attacking me, if not physically, then emotionally. Trying to destroy me for no other reason than because they don't like me. I've lived with that my entire life, and the fear of that happening to me again is what prevents me from engaging with people generally. Sometimes, when controversy pops up, I think the wisest decision is to not get involved at all. Because if I say the wrong thing in the wrong way, which I'm prone to do, having very limited social experience, people can and do take me out of context and try to ruin me. And unfortunately, because of my history, it works. I'm telling you all this because I want to humanize myself. I want you guys to understand where I'm coming from, where I came from, and where my intentions stand in my life. I consider myself to be one of the most genuine people alive. I only have the best of intentions for anybody. I just want to help. I want to contribute and support people. I'm only ever trying to help others and to survive while I do it. Here's the bottom line. I don't agree with lots of people in my community on lots of stuff, but I should still be able to work with them. I don't believe in hating anybody for anything, ever, even the worst of the worst. At best, I feel sympathy and compassion for the worst people in the world that their brain functions so far out of the norm. Something is broken in them that made them who they are, and I don't feel like they deserve hate for that. I want to help them to come to the right conclusions and get help. I talked about this in my video on social shunning, but I believe that if we socially ostracize or shun somebody, they'll lock themselves deeper inside an echo chamber. We need to talk to people about issues and work with them to solve problems. Never, never excommunicate them. Never label them as part of an outgroup. That's what I've stood for since day one. If you see yourself slipping into an us versus them mentality, if you feel like you're being pressured into picking one person over another, then you need to reevaluate your feelings on things. When I was 11, I listened to my first Tool album. Music has always played a big part in my life, as it has with most people. And maybe I'm mentioning this because I just got back from a Tool concert, but there are a few songs that have really resonated with me, like Tool's song Schism. Cold silence has a tendency to atrophy any sense of compassion between supposed lovers, between supposed brothers. When I lost everybody important to me, that song was still there, playing in the background. When I lost my best friend, Sean, who I've talked about on this channel before, I heard those words ringing in the back of my head, between supposed brothers. Or their song Push It, rest your trigger on my finger, bang my head upon the fault line. You better take care not to make me enter, 'cause if I do, we both may disappear. Waiting to set me off, and I fall for it. If I enter the fight, there's no turning back. Or the song Right in Two, monkey killing monkey over pieces of the ground. Give them thumbs, they make a club and beat their brother down. Fight till they die over sun, over sky, over sea, over air, over blood, over love, over words. Polarizing. I have always believed in getting along with everybody. I started YouTube in 2016 because there were too many extremists on each side of political issues. They started as atheist YouTubers and they quit. They moved on to social issues and that polarized them. There was no rationality on either side. I swore I'd never get involved in that controversy. But no matter how determined I am to stay out of it, people draw battle lines and place you on one side or the other. For the record, I see this kind of behavior in cults all the time. It's a hallmark of the mindset. For those who might be unaware, there's a split happening in the community right now, and it makes me sick. What makes me even sicker is the fact that people are reveling in the split. They want it. They're proud of it. That hurts me to my core. Because for the past 3 years, I've been doing everything I can to bring people together. To build up a group of support for people who need it. People who can't have outside friends, and who don't know anybody on the inside of their respective religions. So they watch live TV so they can have a connection to the outside world. And it was just sawed in two. This is my final request. Please don't pick sides in any tangential battles happening. Please accept value that your favorite YouTubers or public figures have to offer. Disagreement is okay. We don't all have to agree with each other. That's the nature of coming together, accepting our differences and appreciating each other's good qualities. Anyways, that's all I've got for you guys. Don't forget to support me if you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it. First, you can support me on Patreon. That's the best place to support me. You get early access to my videos if you donate there. Also, you can support me on Teespring. I have some interesting merchandise if you want to take a look. And finally, don't forget to check out my Facebook and my podcast. I talk about all kinds of interesting things on there, so give it a listen. All links are in the description as always. Thanks for watching, guys.